Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about my first week of using the Supernote Manta at work and kind of my first thoughts. So you got the unboxing, you got the first impressions of handling the device for the first time, but now I used it for an entire week at work, basically swapping it out for my A5X, which has been my trusty companion for approaching 4 years, so for over 3.5 years. And what I want to do in this video is I want to take that a little bit further and talk about kind of the things I see currently that are both challenges and that are improvements over the previous device. Now, there will be a follow-up video that talks about these two head-to-head and what I think the key differences are and whether or not I would recommend an upgrade or whether this is just something you should buy as a new device if you're entering the space. But for now, let's go ahead and jump over and I will show you a little bit of my thoughts and also talk a little bit about, what I see moving forward. All right, so here we are. This is a post I did over on Patreon, and I'm going to walk you through kind of the main things that I've thought about, and then I'm going to show you a couple of things on the device itself, because I think that'll help illustrate this. So we'll start with the opportunities, and then we'll move backwards to what I think are really big improvements. So software consistency. It seems like they were rushing a little bit, Supernote was, and Rada was, to get the A5X2 out. So they sacrificed doing their normal procedure, which is throwing out the beta, working out the kinks and the bugs, and then moving forward to the full release. I understand the push. I understand the process. I just think that now that's created a few inconsistencies. And to be fair and to be completely transparent, I've seen some reviews where some of the things I'm going to mention here are not as much of an issue. And I don't know if that's just device specific or if they're doing it a different way than I am, but I want to be clear that these are my experiences. So double check your device. Don't just take my word on it. There are inconsistencies with devices occasionally. And so just do your due diligence. So for me, one thing is the touch input. My understanding is the Carta 1300 Mobius screen is supposed to be faster and more responsive. During the setup process, I did not find that to be the case. When I went to touch and use the virtual keyboard, it was sluggish. Now, that could be because I'm so not used to using it because I always use the handwriting keyboard that I was just clunky and it was me. It was a me thing. But it felt not as responsive as my A5X. Now, again, I've heard and seen other people that have not had that experience. My only concern about if that is harder to do and it isn't as responsive or picking up on touch as much, you could have the issue when you're using complex passwords and having to sign in for the first time that it adds a lot of friction to that process. Next is on the typing experience. So the lag and missing typing keyboard shortcuts is a real issue for me. Supposedly this was rolled out in an earlier software upgrade where it would allow you to select text, copy and paste, and bold, italics, underline, all of that. The bold, italics, and underline work, but the selection and copy and paste does not. So that makes for a really kind of disjointed experience when it comes to the typing experience. It makes it really hard to do, quite frankly. It's not something that's fun at all right now. So I would not recommend it. You can see my typing video. I'll link it in the description below. If they fix those things, it could actually be a really fun experience and a really good experience, especially on this new device with the form factor. One other thing I want to jump over and show you really quick as far as ghosting, because that to me has been something I've noticed, and I don't remember this being as much the case. I know it's not the case on my A5X as much. The Nomad had a little bit of it, but it seems to be more pronounced here. And let me just show you what I mean. So we'll take a marker so that we have a nice big thing that we're writing with, and we'll do this here. So let's go ahead and select that. And then when I pull that out of the way, I don't know if you see all of those remnants from where I pulled that. And let me pull it up towards the camera so that you can see. That is quite a bit of ghosting. And if I pull that around the page, you're going to see that that kind of makes even more of an issue. Now, I don't know what the issue is, and of course, with the Supernote, you do that quick swipe up and it goes away, but it does persist. And I don't know if that's just a software issue. I don't know if it's that it's such an enhanced screen as far as more resolution. So you're going to have those without something like Book Super Refresh technology. But again, it's not a huge deal because it's a quick swipe up and you're fixed, but it is something that it doesn't make sense. I don't know if it's something that can be fixed with software or what the overall experience needs to be. But it was something that I wanted to show so that you could be aware of it because I think it does change the experience a little bit. Now, to be fair, I'm doing this big component here and showing that with smaller amounts of text, you probably wouldn't notice it as much. It's going to be much less pronounced. It's still there, but you're not going to notice it as much just because of the way that the screen is handling those pixels. But I did want to show that. I think it's really important to talk about that. I know that I've communicated this to Rada, all of these things that I'm mentioning, and I know they are talking about them for future software developments. So let's pop back over. So we've talked about ghosting. The next, PDF templates. This is something that has always been a huge plus for the Supernote community and for Rada and for the user community to be able to pull in PDF templates, convert those into notes, which then allows you to use handwriting recognition, links, all of those powerful note features inside of a PDF. Didn't help as much on the A6X because of the idea that you're working on a much smaller canvas. But on something the size of the A5X2, there's a lot more room to be able to really engage with some of these tools. This is still a function, but for some reason in this current software iteration or in this current build, it broke the timeout. So when you go to pull in a PDF, it's going to time itself out and it won't let you create that template. They are aware of this and they are working on it, but I think it's something they need to really do, to really focus on, because I think that's something a lot of people are going to want to use. And quite frankly, I want a demo to show the Morning Coach, Get It Done Now Planner, and show Voya's My Daily Organizer and how that functionality looks on this particular device. Another real quick demo that I want to show, and this leads us to the last two challenges here. One is what I think is something important, which is the missing folio dust plug. And let me talk about why that's important. So the reason that this is important to me is because they have and they include in the package a dust plug for the pin loop. So if you decide you don't want to use the pin loop for whatever reason, you can put a plastic insert inside here to keep dust from getting in the machine. I think that's fantastic. I think it's a very elegant way to do it. It's flush, so you don't even notice it. When you have that in there, you just think that that's the way it was designed. What they don't have, however, is something like that for this. When you pull off this Half-Folio, you have these exposed holes here. And dust can get in there, particulates can get in there, and it's a solution that seems like it could be pretty easy. Either some kind of plastic latching system or some kind of rubberized, I'm not an engineer, so some of this stuff is not going to be in like the best language, but the idea being that you could put something here and it wouldn't even have to be any thicker than this little piece here, but something that would just insert and protect the pogo pins, which are right here, and keep particulates from getting into the system. Again, it's not a huge thing, but from a user experience piece, it makes sense that that would be something you would want to do. The next thing that I want to talk about here is the back cover removal. There's a learning curve, and I think that, quite frankly, Supernote's done a great job of communicating. They've got a video for this. I watched Voya take it off, and he was like a Zen genie, got it off of there really fast, really quick, back on very fast, very quick, seamlessly. You'll notice in my video that's linked in the description below that I struggled with it a little bit. I had to practice a couple of times. I figured out the best system for me and I made it work. I don't see this as something you're going to want to remove all of the time, but I think that there's a learning curve, and it's a little bit harder to do than you would think it would be. It's not quite as intuitive. Small thing, but I think it's a challenge, and some people who are especially not used to taking apart devices may find that as a challenge. Now, in talking about improvements, one is going to be this Half-Folio. I absolutely love the design. I love the feel of it. I love that it's washable. I like the lightness of it. Taking it on and off is very nice. I love that it has this wraparound book component. I think that if they had a plug again that would go in and cover that, if this is off of it, it would be great. I like how it makes the device sit flat. That's an improvement over the Nomad, quite frankly, and the A5X, because you don't have that, kind of disjointed wobble. I take my pen out, so I don't have that issue of worrying about the device being off center. I know that bothers some people and completely understand why. The pen loop, I think the pen loop actually is a stroke of genius. I know some people don't love this as much, but I absolutely do. I think being attached to the device gives it more portability. If you don't want to use the folio, you still have your pen loop and you can carry the device with you by itself. It also has the customization. It has the dust plug. It has being able to size your own pen loop and customize it. All of those are definitely huge pluses as far as portability goes for me. Another improvement, and again, this is an improvement over the A5X, not necessarily over the A6X2, because this is the same design language. The dual sliders. Dual sliders have been tremendously valuable for me because I tend to keep everything now very clean on here. So yes, I can bring back my toolbar if I want to. It's right there. I can bring back my page bar, but I can also leave this blank, because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use undo and redo, or I'm going to use a selection tool, or I am going to use an eraser. That's everything I need. So I have a clear canvas to be able to do whatever I want to do without having to constantly go to the toolbar because of these dual sliders. That is such a huge advantage as far as productivity and being in flow and not having to worry about constantly what changes you need to make, what tools you need to find on the toolbar. It's all right there. And it's that includes your headings. So your headings, your keywords, your to-dos, your calendars, your links, copy, paste, all of that. And this goes back to the functionality at the point of selection and why that's so important. The expandable storage, again, that's under here. Your challenge or your opportunity is making this an easier experience, or at least maybe trying to figure out in the future a way to make this a little bit more frictionless. But the expandable storage, the modularity of it, are huge. The non-skid feet, so having these feet on the back of it is a big advantage because of the fact that whether I'm using this with or without the cover, that will keep it from sliding and going anywhere. So just the ability to take the cover off if I don't want it and not have to worry about this being slippery and sliding around is a huge win. So that's a big piece for why this is important. Contrast. We showed this during the unboxing a little bit, but just the overall contrast of the screen and how that looks, how that renders. It's absolutely beautiful. I do agree with Voya's unboxing and first thoughts that Rada may want to think about where they set that default level because, again, you kind of can be misled because it's set to the lowest level possible. And then when you turn it to a more aggressive, but not overly aggressive contrast level, you'll see a crisper text. And I think that's something that they could really work on. And also being able to do that in notes. It's, again, this is a pro. This is an improvement is the contrast level because it is 300 ppi. It is a visibly lighter screen and darker text. So I think there's a lot of possibility there. And I think it's really important that they optimize that. Another big one is going to be Android 11. Again, this isn't something that everyone is going to enjoy or love, but I tried side loading apps on the A5X. It was never a great experience. It was much better on the A6X2, which is also running Android 11. But just the idea that I can have things like Audible and be able to listen to my audiobooks is a huge win. Being able to have Kobo, Libby, and Nook and Kindle on here and being able to access that full range of resources and be able to read on this device as an all-in-one reader. Yes, without a front light, but that's okay because I have the Wave to read at night if I'd like to do that. But another thing too, it does have some limited functionality when it comes to various web apps. I don't use a lot of this. I have Word on here that I'm going to mess around with for someone had asked me about. I do have Obsidian that I'm experimenting with, but again, that's another video for another time. But I also have Feedly. Now, this is something that I've been looking at and experimenting with a little bit. And some of these won't run on Android 8. And that was the reason that I had an issue. Here you go. You have a text-based option so that you don't have a bunch of images as you're looking through things. But then when you want to go to the actual article, you click on that article and it takes you into the web browser. Now, again, this is not going to be, you're not going to have BSR or something like that on here. It's a very crisp text. And the experience of scrolling, yes, it's not going to be wonderful. It's going to load slow. But if you're just worried about reading, the default browser will let you do that. Back, and now you're back here. Again, it's a work in progress. It's just the fact that we can now do this. Interesting and welcome improvement to the system. I know the A6X2 introduced it, but now with the Manta, you have much more space and visibility to be able to actually use these things. And finally, the last thing, and I think the most important thing with this device, when it comes to having used it for a week is that it's modular. Now, did I use the modularity? No, absolutely not. It just came brand new. But the idea of knowing that I can get a battery, because I know Supernote is working on getting those sourced and up for sale. The idea that if they go to an X3 system on chip, that I don't have to buy a new device. I can just buy the new motherboard and system on chip and put that in myself. And now I have a totally refreshed device without the crazy amount of e-waste. I think those are really important things to be thinking about in the future. So the fact that it is modular, the fact that it is upgradable, it is expandable, all of that makes a lot of sense and makes this a really interesting and intriguing device. But with that, let's jump back over and close out. All right, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there. Again, this was just my way of talking about my first impressions with a week of use under my belt and why I think this is a really interesting device. And I think something that if, we'll go to the head-to-head at some point between it and the A5X. But if you're new to the space, if you don't already own an e-ink tablet, this device is well worth consideration as a purchase. You can't buy the A5X anymore, so you're not going to be able to get the first generation of this device at a cheaper price unless you want to buy a used device, which if that's where you are and you can find one, they hold up very well. But again, you will be having some trade-offs. And I think when I do the head-to-head on this with that device, that'll become clear, and you'll just have to decide what is it that you want the device to be able to do. But in this first week, a lot of really positive things with this device and what it's capable of doing and how it functions. And I've really enjoyed using it. I found the writing experience to be on par with the A5X. I love the fact that the dual sliders are there and I can work those into my workflow. What I was missing with the A6X2 is now here with the A5X2. And to me, that's kind of its most compelling feature over this first week, is just realizing how much time I was spending going to the toolbar to switch between different things, because you couldn't have both the lasso erase gesture and the lasso selection gesture. So I'd have to do headings, and I'd have to do the lasso select, and I'd have to do, all of these things to, make it work the way that I wanted it to do. Now I don't have that issue. I just put my two fingers on the slider, circle it, and I go to town and I make everything work. So pretty cool. But as always, thank you for listening. Hopefully you got something out of this video. Please, if you want to see more detail, I have some pictures and some other things over on Patreon. This is currently for supporters in that supporter tier, but remember, there is a 7-day free trial. So if you want to do a free trial, check out all of the things that I have on Patreon, and you'll see my patrons scrolling. Thank you for those in the top tier. In the supporter tier, thank you for anyone who's a paid member and all of my free members. But, check out the free trial. You don't have anything to lose, and you'll be able to read this article. Eventually, I will move this over probably to the blog and make it more visible. But I also wanted to get a video out talking through these different components, because I think that's really important as you're thinking through, is this a device I should really consider now that it's here? Because you have the anticipation, you have the hype on release, and then you have the use. And hopefully you'll see that I'm using it. Is it going to be an automatic upgrade for everybody? Again, that's another video. But I know that it's really worked seamlessly into my workflow, just like my A5X did. Again, thank you so much. Drop your comments below. Please like the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed. And until next time, stay safe and keep on moving forward. Talk to you soon. Bye.